lot of deep doctrine in that passage, really. And you can go through that verse by verse and learn a lot of things. We're not going to do that this evening, but anyway, good to kind of be in this new room. I kind of like it. I thought we'd get swallowed up, small crowd in the giant room, but I think it looks like we fit in here. Unfortunately, it costs twice as much as the other room, so we're not going to look at that as an option. But anyway, I appreciate you guys being here, and I think I've probably mentioned this to you before, but it's kind of such a stark contrast. When we go to Iola, we have primarily ladies there, and they're older ladies. And then we come here, and it's pretty much younger men, it seems like, and so that's a blessing. I wish we could mix it up a little bit. But it's a blessing, and so I come here and I see young men fired up, wanting to serve the Lord, and I think, man, I don't know, what can I do to help? What can I do to help them to grow and all that kind of stuff? So anyway, we started this thing, idea of the ministry training workshop. This was kind of a thought I had, brainchild, whatever I had a long time ago. And I was trying to get it pumped up. I was trying to get Pastor Collins on board and all that kind of stuff. And then I realized we just mostly have older ladies in the church, and I'm trying to teach them how to, and so anyway, there was definitely something lacking there, so it didn't work. And I put things on hold, and now I feel like, man, it's all these thoughts that I had and all these things I was preparing for. It's very fitting. And so, I got the opportunity to use, hey, we're going to start doing some of these things, the ministry training workshop and all that kind of stuff. And so when I first had those ideas, though, I started a website and a blog. Basically, one of the aspects of the website is two-part. I changed it. It used to be called The Second Man. All right, that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight, is The Second Man. And that used to be called secondman.com. I changed it to addictedtoministry.com. I don't know if anybody online or whatever saw me share some posts from that. But the idea was, and if you go on there, you'll see that most of it is from the point of view of a second man, right? I was an assistant pastor, youth pastor, whatever. A second man that was writing these articles and everything to other second men. People in the ministry, not necessarily in the position or full-time or anything like that, but just men that wanted to serve the Lord. And unfortunately, a lot of times pastors can't give a whole lot of information to their second men. Sometimes they're just afraid to even say some things to their second men because they don't want to, look like they're lifted up with pride and say, hey, well, this is what you got to do for me, or something like that. And so it was kind of nice as a second man to talk to other second men and say, hey, this is how you need to treat your pastor, or this is how you do it. It's convenient, and I made it. There's a lot of articles on there. Every time I go through one, I see a whole bunch of typos, so don't judge if you go through there. But some of that, I don't know, some of that might help or not, but it was good for me during that time. I personally, just so we are on the same page here, I think the Bible gives two offices, right? And that is that of the pastor / elder / bishop. I think those are all the same. And then what is known as a deacon, right, is another office. Okay, these would be positions of authority in the church. A lot of structures of church bodies out there that it gets real confusing. Office of elders, or there'll be a bishop and he's over the elders, and then they have the, what do they call them, senior pastor, and then you got the youth pastors, and you got most of that's not in the Bible, right? Right. So they say, oh, I don't know where to put it, so we'll just say pastors, right? So we got more than one pastor, even though one of them is not really a pastor, he's a second man. So anyway, I just started calling it second man, right? Now, you look second man up, a lot of times they're going to give you the second Adam or the second man. The Bible talks about Jesus being the second man or whatever. But really, that's a term that's used a lot. And I remember I heard of some conferences or some ministries that were geared towards the second man. But mostly what I saw were called leadership conferences. You've heard of leadership conferences, all the big Bible colleges, give out the books, and we're training men to be leaders, and all this kind of stuff. And I remember when I was writing this, putting this website together and everything, thinking, really we don't need more leadership conferences in our society and in churches. I think we need fellowship conferences. Right? And I'm thinking, really, guys need to learn how to follow. So I used this tagline that was becoming better leaders by becoming better followers. I thought that was a neat idea. If you look at most men of God that are in a leadership position, you can track their history back and find there was a time where they were really good at following, really good at being the second man. Right? Now, obviously, we know second man would imply that the first man is the pastor, and we understand that pastors know better than anybody else, and the Lord is the chief shepherd. We understand all that. But you understand the principle I'm talking about. You got a leader. I'm there in church. Don't listen to all these churches out there right now that are really big, like everybody's equal elders and stuff. That doesn't work, man. You get a bunch of guys and everybody's equally, what do you think about this? What do you think we should? I like getting people involved. I like a democracy. I'm not saying that churches need to be a democracy. I'm just saying I like to hear opinions. Hey, let's take a vote on it. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you get somebody that he's just not a leader, and everybody has got equal opinions and all that stuff, I guarantee you that's not going to work. You know? And you don't find that in the Bible, even though you can read all these books and articles saying that that's how it was. Because the Bible uses the word elders plural a lot of times, and so they say, look, all churches back then had multiple elders. I don't see it that way, but I'm not going to get all into defending that right now. What I want to talk about is this concept of second men. So here in this text in 2 Timothy, man, you guys don't you love the book of Timothy? Any young man that loves the Word of God and loves the ministry, you read that book and I just soak it up. You know, if you don't know where to read your Bible, you know, that's one of those fallbacks. I've probably read Timothy more than any other book of the Bible, 1st and 2 Timothy, because you just fall back and like, well, I can get something out of this today, and you open it up, and there's just so much in there. And you know, I feel like sometimes, especially as a second man, I was able to just really just relate to Timothy, you know, and all the instruction that Paul was given. It was like, man, he's giving that instruction to me, and I was able to kind of soak that up. But here we see this young man, Timothy. We really don't know how old he is. We assume he's young. The Bible talks about his youth and all that kind of stuff. And here we see that he's given this great responsibility to become a leader himself. But in order to do that, he must first be a follower and follow Paul. So look at 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. Great passage here. It says, and the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. So I picture this guy, and he's, you know, look, there's a lot of witnesses listening to Paul and watching Paul, but he's holding on to that, and he's saying, I want to just soak in what Paul's saying, and those same things that I learned from Paul, that I'm going to take that, and I'm going to teach other faithful men, right? So he says, commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. It's an ongoing cycle. You understand that's the way it's supposed to work. This leader trains up another guy, and then he either helps him and they work together, or he replaces him or whatever, and then he teaches people some of those same things that he was taught, and it's just an ongoing cycle that's supposed to continue. Look at chapter 3, actually, verse 10. You know, Paul's still going down. He's writing to Timothy, and you recognize that this is one of the last letters that Paul, apparently one of the last letters Paul wrote. In prison, you know, feels like, hey, this is going to be the end of my ministry or whatever, and he's just pouring out everything that he can to Timothy. That's why I read it. And so he's giving him everything, and he's trying to set him up for success. And he says this in verse 10, chapter 3, verse 10. But thou hast fully known my doctrine. He said that in 2 Timothy. I don't know if you noticed whenever he was reading that, it said, my gospel or something like that. So people have come up with all these weird ideas. Right. Paul had this other gospel.
Right.
You know, that's not what he's saying, right? He's just saying, hey, this is the gospel that I gave to you. I delivered to you. Amen. It's the same gospel everybody's always gave, right? He's saying that. And so here he says, you've known my doctrine. He's not saying I came up with some kind of weird teaching or some new teaching, you know, for the age of Paul. He's just saying, hey, these are the things that I taught you, and you know. And he goes on, he says, you've fully known my doctrine and my manner of life, and the purpose and faith and long-suffering, charity. He goes down this list. He's like, you've watched me, you've seen me do these things, now you need to go do it. You know? So he has this great responsibility to become a leader himself. And one of the things this thought stuck with me when I first became an assistant pastor or second man, if you want to call it, and one of these things stuck with me. I recognized this. This is profound, right? The second man, a second leader, I guess you could say, is the first follower. Profound, huh? All right, let me explain what I mean. If somebody sang a special, right? We don't clap for people after they sing a special. Just follow along with me. If someone said, "Man, that was good," and they started clapping, right? So you had one person, and nobody's clapping. You know what they would do? They'd be like, "Ooh," and they'd feel stupid, right? But if one guy starts clapping confidently, someone else says, "Oh, I better join along with him." Guess who the leader was? The leader was that second man, because he was the first follower, right? And he stepped up and he did that. So there was an experiment that was done along those lines one time, and a social experiment, whatever you want to call it. And this guy, they went out into this big field, and there was a guy probably drunk. I saw it on a YouTube video or something, but it was an experiment that they used at like colleges or whatever to show this principle. And there was this guy going out there, and these guys stood up, they started dancing. I don't know if they were getting ready for like a fireworks display or what, but there were all these like blankets set out like on the grass, and people sitting there, and they're all watching these guys just get up and dancing, and they're kind of laughing at them like those guys look stupid, right? Then all of a sudden, these two girls got up and said, "Hey, let's go join them." And they got up there, and they started dancing. Now everyone's like, "Oh man, these guys are foolish." You know, but by the end of the video, now I'm not recommending you get up in public and start dancing, okay, that's weird, but by the end of the video, so many people were up dancing that the guys that were sitting down in the grass felt like, "Man, we feel awkward, we should get up and start dancing." Same thing as an applause, okay? Applause is one thing. How about a standing ovation? You ever see some people start standing, you're like, no, I don't want to stand. I just want to stay in my seat. But after a while, the majority is standing, and you're like, I'm going to look like a real loser if I sit. So you stand up, right? They were following, not necessarily, the first person. They were following that second person that got up there and said, "Hey, let's follow this guy." And that just meant so much to me, because I was like, you know what? I have great, not that I was like searching for power, but I have a great responsibility, a great influence on on others around me by following my pastor. And when I follow the pastor, I might be able to put out some flyers of all these other people that are like, we don't like this guy, we don't want to do what he says, or whatever. Because I'm going to get to in a minute, even if the leader is not a good leader, right? You are doing harm to yourself and to the whole congregation or whatever your ministry, whatever you're talking about. You're doing harm to the whole body by not standing up and agreeing with it. Now, I'm not talking about agreeing with the leader whenever he's wrong, doctrinally wrong or something like that. People, well, we got to do what he says. That's ridiculous. I remember I had preaching at a youth rally last year. We had a speaker come in, and throughout the whole thing, he kept looking at me and they're like, "Now, if I say anything and your pastor says something else, right, he's right and I'm wrong." And I'm like, that's kind of a dumb thing to say. You're either right or you're wrong. You don't just, well, he says that he's right, no, the Bible is what matters, right? So I'm not telling you just, you understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying follow a man and just do whatever he says, and even if it's wrong, whatever, that would be ridiculous. I'm not saying that. And none of these guys in the Bible were like that. But throughout the Bible, we find examples of godly men, strong leaders, sometimes not so godly men that were leaders, whatever, and those who work under them or for them, as it were. And so I just want to give three categories. I think we could put them all in three categories, and of course there's endless amount of levels underneath these categories. But three basic categories of this, first man, second man relationship. Okay. So the first category, I'm going to go worst to best. All right. First category would be this: a bad, weak second man who serves under a good. Well, I guess another one would be a bad second man that serves under a bad first man. That'd be a disaster. But we're not even going to talk about that one. Okay. So a bad, or I'm just putting bad and weak in the same place. You understand what I mean? Like somebody could be strong and be bad. So I'm not, don't misunderstand me. But when we're talking about leaders, we're talking about people that are they can get people on board, they can present the gospel, they can really get people stirred up for the Lord or whatever. That's what I'm talking about, just a good leader, okay, and a strong leader. Sometimes you have a bad or a weak second man who serves under a good or strong leader. So you got this man of God who's trying to do work, and he's good, and he's doing a good work, and he's a strong leader, but somehow he's got this knucklehead working underneath him. And can you think of any examples in the Bible where we find that? Anything jump out at you? First one I thought about was this, Aaron. Now Aaron did some good things along the way. But if you think about Aaron, and I almost feel like it's Moses, like God punished Moses with this. Like, okay, you want to complain and say that I chose the wrong guy, and you're not the man, and I need to find somebody else. I'll give you Aaron to be your spokesperson. Right? Because Aaron was not a good second man. What's he do? He goes up in the mountain to receive the word of the Lord, and Aaron's down here saying, yeah, I guess give me your jewelry. Yeah, I'll throw it in the fire. And out pops this golden calf. Where'd that come from? What a dummy. You came back down, what would you think? Would he still be in charge? It's weird that he still stayed in charge, and his sons still had that position of being, maybe God's trying to show us something there. I always make jokes about, how much God cared, how much Jesus cared about finances. He put Judas over in the bag, right? Well, how much he cares about the position of the priest. He put Aaron. You kind of look at that. I'm like, what in the world with Aaron? And so don't turn there, but if you ever read that story, Exodus 32, if you're not super familiar with it, Moses going up to be this great leader. God's called him to lead the people, and he goes up in the mountain, and then you got the second man, the deacon, if you would, down on the mountain, just letting people go into idolatry and all that kind of stuff. When a pastor has a man under him that he wants to put in a position of authority, whatever, here's what he's hoping. In my absence, this guy's a good representation of what I stand for, what I believe, right? Now, again, that's not lifting up the authority of the pastor more than what it should be. It's just saying, this is what he needs. And he has to go out and, let's say he's not there for a service, and then somebody pops in. He wants to put somebody there who he can trust. All right, he's going to pretty much represent what I'm wanting for this ministry or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? And you put a guy like Aaron in there, and man, that's a turf. Or a guy, and look at Aaron. There's examples. Remember he and Miriam were criticizing, Moses' wife. The way I read that is because she was black, and they were criticizing her for that. And that's the way I get that. But anyway, and so you got a second man who's supposed to be with you, being a spokesperson for you, and he's sitting there criticizing you, and he's doing all that. That'd be a terrible thing. And so, look, these guys are typically more of a thorn in the pastor's side than they are a help. So what would my advice be to these guys? Well, man, first of all, and I know a lot of guys, I've met a lot of guys like this, and a lot of them are getting paid, like the church is taking care of them. And they're just sitting around criticizing the pastor, or they're sitting around causing problems for him and all that stuff. And man, as a second man, I realized I don't want to be that guy. I want to be somebody who's going to be there, be a good representation of my pastor, and do the job that he asked me to do, and all that kind of stuff. And the interesting thing, I know God gave Moses Aaron, right? Another example, Judas. Now Jesus knew about Judas, and he still picked Judas, right? So it seems like a weird situation. Like, why did they go ahead and keep Judas? Now Jesus had 12 second men. You understand? Second man isn't just like this. There's got to be one person, but a second man, all these men that he relied on to represent him in his ministry. And so he had these guys, and he had Judas. Judas was causing problems all the time, Somebody did something, we could have given that money to the poor. We could have just always you can just kind of see what's going on now. But Jesus picked him, But nowadays, that's not always the case. Sometimes it's like, hey, that guy is a thorn in the side of this ministry and of this pastor. You just need to go find someplace else to work, get rid of them or whatever. And you see that happening sometimes. Sometimes that can save a ministry, I'm not talking bad about anybody that left left Iola, but we had a lot of people that left Iola. In fact, people still talk about it all the time. Oh, all these people leave. What's going on? What's going on? Look, God cleaning house. You know, I don't know. Some of these people left. You know, not necessarily. They weren't necessarily causing a whole lot of grief. Some of them were causing grief. Let's be honest about it. But you know, the main thing was they weren't getting involved. They weren't supporting the pastor. They weren't doing it. What are you here for then? You know what I'm saying? What are we going to accomplish? Amen. You just can't have that. Somebody's got to go. Either the leader or that second man is causing a problem. Amen. So what a terrible situation that would be for a good, strong leader to have a bad and weak second man. Hebrews 13:17. Turn over there. You're probably familiar with this. Hebrews 13, verse 17. I like this passage of scripture. It sounds like, maybe he's talking about government or something like that. I've heard it used that way. But really, if you think about what he's talking about in the church. In the church, those who have rule over you, talking about pastors, leaders. He says, obey them that have rule over you and submit yourselves. Why? For they watch for your souls, as they that must give account. Okay, so now the next part is saying, well, why do you have to obey them? Why is it so important that you submit to them? And it says this, that they may do it with joy and not with grief. For that is unprofitable for you. Amen. The more a pastor has to oh man, I don't know if I should say this. I don't know if I should ask this person to do that. He's probably not going to want to do it. I'm going to be uncomfortable. You know, he's going to only question everything that I do. And so it becomes a grief to him to even lead over the people. And guess who it's affecting? Everybody. It's unprofitable for you. It's plural. I was talking about everybody. There he's saying, just submit. He's going to give an account to God, in this life for the bad choices that he makes or whatever. Interestingly enough, and this isn't in my notes, but if you read Revelation, I don't know, people have different agreements. Maybe some of y'all don't agree with this, I don't know, but when he talks about the 7 angels over the 7 churches, I believe those are pastors, and I don't know if you agree with me on that or not, but when you read the 7 churches that are over the 7 pastors, angels that are over the 7 churches, it's talking about pastors, and I think just the word angel, that's to think about like an evangelist, right? Somebody who's giving the message, and I think so we're talking about these messages. But anyway, but here's my point on that. If that's true, if those are the pastors over those 7 churches, you read that in Revelation 2, where it's talking about, he's giving this word to the angel, and he's telling them, you're going to be accountable for all these things. I mean, if you read that, it's like, man, I'd hate to be that guy. He's not really talking about the whole church. He's talking about that guy who's, everything rises and falls on leadership. You've heard that phrase. And so it's a high position, to have in the sense of, there's a lot on the line. And so, man, why wouldn't you want to make it as easy as you can? Like if he messes up, that's on him. But you did everything you could to help him and support him. That would be good. All right. So that's the first one. Second one is this. How about this one? A good, strong second man that serves under bad or weak leaders. There's a lot of examples of that in the Bible. How about in 1 Samuel, you read about Samuel who serves under Eli. And I don't think that Eli was some seriously bad, wicked guy, but he certainly wasn't a strong leader. And he allowed his sons to do some things that was just, these were reprobates. The Bible makes it clear these guys were reprobates. It says, that God would slay them. That verse he's saying that, that was already it was already in action. It was going to happen. God was going to slay them. Didn't want them to repent. Didn't want them to turn to him because he was ready to slay them. That's exactly what it means to somebody get turned over to a reprobate mind. So you read that about the Hophni and Phinehas, and that's exactly what was going on there. So Eli was just a weak leader, and he ended up paying for it. But he had Samuel working under him, and he was a very faithful, he just did whatever he asked him to do. He listened to him, he learned, and later on, he ended up being the guy that God would use. Okay? And so here's some advice I would have for anybody in this situation who's a second man, but serving under a bad or weak leader. Number one is this. A lot of times, it's just, I'm I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. I don't think I'm a bad guy, but I recognize where I fall short in some areas of leadership and stuff like that. And so here's what I can say from the perspective, I don't want to compare myself to Eli, but here's what I can say from the perspective of somebody who's just not the greatest leader, you know. Sometimes they're just bad at delegating, bad at like telling people what to do or whatever. And so here's something that you need to do in that situation. Just go to them and ask them, you know, hey, what can I do? What can I do to help you, you know? And they might not be able to tell you. They might not be able to tell you. I appreciate Brother Stevie comes to me a lot. Hey, brother, I know this is part of his job and everything. I think he's been trained like that, right? But he's like, hey, what can we do? What can I do to improve? What can I do to do better? You get over there and preaches, and he says, hey, what can I? You remember that message that he preached on taking criticism, right? Or taking you know, I understand. I appreciate that about his heart. And he says, hey, what can I do? Bad thing is I'm always like, man, I don't know what to tell you. I like the way things are going. Just keep it up. Right? So here's the second thing, though. If you got a leader who's bad at telling you what to do, and I'm trying to get better, okay? I'm not telling you what to do. You're going to have to be a self-motivator. You're going to have to learn how to just say, well, something's got to be done. I'm going to do it. Get them involved. Tell them, hey, would it be okay if I do this, you know, or whatever. But come up with the ideas and everything. That's okay. But you're still wanting to be a help to the man, you know. And you want to be a good second leader. And so here's the thing. When you don't know what to do, and you don't have any instructions to do, here's what you need to think. This is super important. Watch this, because this is where I really messed up. And I'm not calling my pastor a bad leader, but there were some faults in the area of leadership. And as a result, I should have stepped up and taken the initiative. So here's rule number one. I don't know what to do. My leader's not giving me instructions. Here's what I know. This is the most important thing that needs to be done for this ministry. That's what you need to try to do. Okay? And so I love the idea of soul winning. I love how pumped up everybody is about, hey, if you don't know what else to do, just go down the doors and get somebody saved, right? Because that's the main thing. You don't have to wait for Brother Rocky to tell you, and I'm glad that I don't have to, right? This is totally opposite from most ministries. Most ministries are like, please, somebody go door knocking with me. Right here, it's just like, man, I got to make sure I'm keeping up with these guys, right? So, but the thing is, do what you know you're supposed to do. And let me give you a good piece of advice. As a leader, you know, and looking back from a guy who was a second man, here's what I know. If a guy isn't given something to do, he'll do whatever he wants to do. I didn't make that up. I heard somebody say that before. And I looked at some other guys' lives, and I looked at this one particular, the guy that said this, okay, he was talking about a particular guy. Wasn't working for him, but he was another guy's second man, if you will. And it just didn't seem like he was getting anything done, right? And the guy said, hey, we need to be on him and say, you know, are you doing this? Hey, let me give you this list of things to do, or whatever, because he's like, if he doesn't have a list of things to do, he's just going to do whatever he feels like doing, right? And that convicted me and smote my heart, because you know what would happen if I showed up and didn't get any instructions, and Brother Collins was out doing something, or maybe he went through a phase where he had a lot of health issues, and so he wasn't around. You know what I would do? I'll say, hey, I'm just going to get caught up on the website. I'm going to get caught up on, you know, and I just try to, you know, do some things that maybe kind of needed to get done, but they certainly weren't a priority. And so what I did was I let soul winning slip. I let, you know, some of that extra study time that I should have had, you know, for teaching the youth department and all that kind of stuff. I let some of that slip. I let very important things slip so that I can get done the things that I wanted to get done. And I do think a lot of people suffer from that. Okay? They say, well, everything rises and falls on leadership. Yeah, but as a second man, I still had a responsibility. See, and so that goes on me. I realize that everybody will say, you know, well, he should have done this and he should have done that. But look, maybe I could have helped. Maybe I could have prevented some of those things from falling the way that they did. And so, I feel like I take some responsibility for that. But that's definitely something we see also in the Bible, and we see that in ministry all the time. And Samuel's a great example of that. And that's good, strong men, but they serve under bad, and I mean weak. I don't mean necessarily evil men. I just mean men that weren't great leaders or whatever. Work to meet. Here's another thing. Okay, so So I said, do what's important, right? Make you up a little list, get organized. You know, hey, prioritize. These are the things that need to get done. And here's an idea. If you say, man, I don't like, I think the guy that I'm working under, whatever, could be so much better. Here's what you do. You think about what your qualifications would be for that man. And you work towards those goals. Hey, this is what I would do. Well, do it. See what I'm saying? However you have the responsibility, the authority to do that. But I'm saying you work for that. Because here's what happens a lot of times in this situation. This is what happened with me. As I ended up down the road, because I was faithful, I stuck around, and I ended up being the next pastor. A lot of times the second man that serves under a weak guy, now I'm not saying like trying to take his place, right? But a lot of times what happens is that guy will step down, and they'll say, hey, this guy's been so faithful, and I really, I feel like I should have done him better, whatever. Why don't you just let him be in charge? Does that make sense? And maybe no one in here, maybe it doesn't apply to you because you're like, hey, I'm not looking for any kind of position or anything. But I'm just saying, if you want to be a help to the ministry, you want to be a help to the Lord, well, you don't have to be accountable for yourself. Stepping up to be the good second lineman. Don't ever undermine or disrespect the man you're serving. Okay, that would be a bad deal. Go around, and I've seen this happen a lot of times. The second man goes around, he's talking to all the other members of the church. Can you believe that he did this? And he believed that. Oh man, that would destroy ministry faster than anything else. All right. There's a way to handle it. Now, if your pastor's doing something that's ungodly or contradicts Scripture or whatever, you can go to him respectfully. You need to, in fact, go to him respectfully and try to help him to correct that. And there's a time to even walk away. Say, well, I can't be involved with this guy's ministry. And in the case that you would say, hey, this guy needs to go because he's hurting the whole congregation, what you do is you need to take another guy with you and privately go to the pastor. Okay, don't pull a quorum. You get up a whole bunch of guys together and say, we're going to go take this guy over by force. That'd be a bad deal, okay? But you need to, here we go. Anyway, but there are guys that have to work under a weak or even bad leader. So the last one is this. This is the best. This is the best example here. The good, strong men who work under good, strong leaders. Man, that is the recipe for success. It really is. Good, strong men, they'll do their part, they'll step in where they need to step in, and then you got the strong leader who's able to give the orders and to lead them, like Paul was able to lead Timothy, and all these examples. Here's some more examples. Aaron wasn't so great of a follower. He had some times where he did some good stuff, but how about this? Joshua. Man, Joshua was serving with Moses almost from the beginning. Exodus 17 is where he steps into place. You can follow that all the way to what time he went into the promised land. Look, Moses didn't even get to go into the promised land, but Joshua did, because he was faithful with him the whole time, and he didn't ever doubt. He didn't ever, walk away from the Lord's will and all that kind of stuff. Another great example, one of my favorite examples, is Elisha. He served under Elijah, and he was very faithful. And at the very end, Elijah wanted him to be there. Whenever Elijah went off the scene, and Elisha picked up the mantle and took over. So here's my advice to that. I've already identified more with the last category. My goal is to be a good leader and a strong leader, okay? So if I get to that position, got some good and strong leaders here, I really do. This isn't meant to put down anybody. In fact, I really want to express how much I appreciate where you guys are headed. Well, here's my advice here. Keep serving and help your leader reach his ultimate potential. Right? When you help your leader succeed, you're going to succeed. You really are. And here's what Elisha did. Look at 2 Kings chapter 3. 2 Kings chapter 3. So, Elijah, I don't know how strong of a guy Elisha was at this point, but he had been very faithful to Elijah, and now Elijah steps off the scene, and people are looking around for what are we going to do now? That's the way I kind of see it. 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 11 says this, But Jehoshaphat said, Is there not here a prophet of the Lord, that we may inquire of the Lord by him? And one of the king of Israel's servants answered and said, Here is Elisha, the son of Shaphat, which poured water on the hands of Elijah. Man, I'm not going to be some guy that just stands around washing people's feet and pouring water on their hands and all that kind of stuff. What do I look like? A servant? A servant. So I wrote the second man page. I was telling you about that. And one of the articles I wrote was called Deacons and Servant Boys. Because here was what I was taught growing up. Like there was a day apparently when there were some strong leaders, and these strong leaders in the IFB movement and everything, and they had guys underneath them, and they would just treat them like, this is what I've been told, right? They just treat them bad and make them go do this stuff. Now I'm not saying a pastor should never do that. That wouldn't be right. They even in the Bible, servants, masters aren't supposed to treat their servants bad, right? Especially in the ministry, you can't imagine that being the case, right? But the article that I wrote was about servant boys, because here's what I heard all this time. Now, don't you ever, you always preaching to pastors, don't you ever treat your servant, they're not your servant boys, your second man, You need to treat them good, you need to pay them well, you need to do all this stuff. Now look, I think preachers should hear that. They should hear, I need to take care of my second men and make sure they're cared for, they got what they need and all that kind of stuff. Because if they succeed, I succeed, right? That's reversed. But they said they're not your servant boys. But the funny thing about that is this. You know what the word deacon means? Deacon is one of those words, okay? There isn't an English word, deacon. So what they did is they went back, it sounds just like the Greek word, or just like the Latin word, okay? You don't have to go back to the Greek, you just look at the English word, and it's the same as the Greek and the Latin word. And it's kind of like baptism, right? There's not really a word baptize, right? Man, I showed a real cool. Can I just depart here just for 1 second? I think I'll remember the deacon. Okay, remind me of deacon. I heard this cool thing. I never thought about this, right? But some people say when the Bible was being translated, everybody knows baptism is immersion, right? It's not sprinkling, right? And everybody knew that. But whenever they were translating the word, and this is another preacher said this, but anyway, when they translated the word, he just translated into baptism. He just kept that same word. He said, I'm not going to use an English word for that. I've heard a couple different theories about why he did that. I have not actually done the research myself. But here's what he said. He said, actually, immersion, King James is right, because he's like, actually, immersion is whenever, let's see, if a ship is sailing and it sinks, it's immersed, right? But if it goes underwater and then they bring it back up, it was baptized, right? You understand? So immersion is just going under. Baptized is going under. Now, I don't know. That's just something I thought was cool. Okay. But deacon is one of those words, right? There's not really an English word for it. So the translators just carried over that word, that was from the Latin and from the Greek. And you know what it means? Servant. It's a servant. A second man isn't a servant. That's exactly what the second man is. No, he's not just serving the pastor. He's serving the church. I understand that. He's not just serving the church. Ultimately, he's serving the Lord. But his job is to be a servant. So a second man shouldn't go around saying, "Well, I just don't get, I don't get paid enough. I don't get taken care of. The preacher's not giving me enough attention," or something like that. Hey, man, think of it as a service. I'm just serving the people. I'm serving the Lord. I'm serving wherever I can be. That's what a deacon is. Now, I realize a deacon is a ordained person. There's some qualifications, but for the most part, what we're talking about is the main, man of God that God's called, and then those who work underneath him. You understand what I'm saying? So that's what a deacon is. And so, if you are doing your job and you're a second man and you're saying, "I'm just going to keep on doing this work," man, just be a servant. Where can I help? And that's what I appreciate about you guys. I really do, man. How can I help? Jump out there and unload this stuff, what can I do? Is there anything I can do to get better? And I appreciate that. I love that. I don't feel like you need to hear preaching necessarily. If anything, I guess I'm just encouraging you, and I'm trying to say, hey, let's be that kind of team, leader and second man team. And then just this, because I don't know where everyone's heart is in here as far as second man. What is your future desire in ministry? Some of y'all might want to be in a position of leadership one day. You might want to go start a church, or you might want to do this. I don't know what everyone's desires are here. But here's the interesting thing. You go through Scripture, and it's always this way. Always this way. The men that God called to lead and to have a good work, are men that often spend many, many years of service. Okay? Now, I don't feel in many ways qualified. Biblically, I think I'm qualified, but in many ways, I don't feel qualified to be a pastor. Okay? But looking back over the time, I'm not saying I deserve it or something like that. I'm saying, looking back, I can see why God would call me. I have been faithful, for many years. That's not bragging. I hope you all understand my heart. Okay? I've been faithful for many years, doing what the pastor told me to do. Before that, Bible college. I went there for Bible college, but I ended up spending 10 years. And what was I doing? Working on the bus. I did sometimes more work whenever I went off to Bible college. I did more work having a full-time job working there than I did when I was on staff as a second man. And sometimes that's the way I felt. And it's not, again, it's just because you have a desire for the Lord. And if you have a desire for the Lord and you're giving it your all and you're working, you don't think God's going to let that pay off someday? Of course He is. He's going to say, man, you've been faithful over little, I'm going to make you ruler over much, right? You say, well, I don't want a position of ruler. Exactly, that's why God was going to call you. The guys that want rulership, they're usually not very good followers. And therefore, their time's not going to come. Or if they take their time by force, they become bad leaders, right? And they're not ready for ministry. So just keep on doing your job, and God's going to use you at a greater level of leadership. You might not even think that you want that right now, but you just wait until on God's time, and He will call you whenever it's time. Timothy seems to be someone who could have gone either way. Timothy, if you read between the lines, because I don't think there's anything clear-cut that says this, Timothy seems to be a guy that was timid. Do you ever get that whenever you read Paul's instructions? He's like, don't be afraid, Go out there and work and go out there and do it. Let no man despise thy youth. Right? And he just keeps on saying this. And you get this feeling, he's even writing to the churches and saying, now, Timothy's coming, and you better receive him. You better, right? Because you get this feeling like Timothy wasn't the guy that would just go in there, let's go get, Timothy, he was faithful. And Paul said, I'm going to pour everything I can into him, and I'm going to try to get him to be the leader he needs to be because I have a job for him to do. Now, history tells us he became bishop of Ephesus or something like that. I have a hard time trusting church history because it's written by people that aren't even Christians a lot of times. But history tells us that. I believe that. I believe Timothy was used in a mighty way. Probably gave his life like so many other servants of God, but I believe he was used in a mighty way. And it was all because he was a good second man. He was faithful. And so, I appreciate you guys' work you're doing. Man, it's got to be hard. I can't even be here like just to counsel or hey, let's do this together or whatever. I'm trying to lead you from an hour and a half away. I know it's difficult. But I really believe you guys are the right people to do it. I think God put us together, and I'm thinking, man, these guys, they step up, they get the job done. And so I just really want to encourage you. If there's anything that I can do to help, let me know. If there's anything you think, man, I really do. I know a lot of you guys are busy, and then you just give whatever extra time you have to soul winning and everything. But if you say, man, I've got extra time, is there something that I can get done? And I'll try to think of something. You know what I mean? So let me do that. Please, if you think, man, he didn't give me anything to do, and I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing, and just take the initiative and say, hey, well, here are some important things we know need to be done. Again, you guys are already doing that. I appreciate that. Be self-motivated. I'm going to try the best I can to motivate you, get you out there and give you marching orders and all that. But sometimes you're going to have to motivate yourself and just keep on doing the work. God's going to bless. Right? He's going to bless in this work, and He's going to bless with your future ministry, whatever it can be. Let's go to Lord first. I thank you, Lord, for these guys and for this work. I pray that you'll help me to lead them and to correct anything that I see that might go the wrong direction. But Lord, my heart and with my eyes, what I see, just guys that want to serve the Lord, go in the right direction. I pray you just help us work together as a team and get the work done the most effectively that we can. Help us each to just, as we're, just be reminded in our minds of one another so that we can pray for one another. And I pray, Lord, that you would just be lifted up and your work would grow. And the job, Lord, would just be something that gets done, and we can all step back and say, praise the Lord for what was accomplished in your name. I pray you help us, Lord, this night.